For number 1, we want to identify the ratio A over C for the indicated angle and find its value. So if we look at A over C, we can see that we would use the sine function since we're looking for the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So we have the sine of 45 degrees would equal A over C. And to figure out what the sine of 45 degrees is, we can draw a 45, 45, 90 triangle, which is already right here, and fill out the sides that we know. So we know 1, 1, root 2. So the sine of 45 would be 1 over root 2, and that would equal root 2 over 2. So the answer would be C. For number 3, we are going to use the unit circle to help us evaluate the cotangent of negative 7 pi over 6. So first we want to locate negative 7 pi over 6 on the unit circle. And if we start at 0 radians and we move clockwise, we are moving in the negative direction. So negative 7 pi over 6 would be just over negative pi. So we're working with this angle right here. And if we take a look at the coordinate in the first quadrant that corresponds with the coordinate in the second quadrant, we see that the x value is negative. So we have negative root 3 over 2, and the y value is positive. So the y value remains as positive 1/2. So now we just have to remember, how do we use the coordinate to help us find cotangent? Well, tangent of our angle theta equals y over x, the opposite side, which is the y side, over the adjacent side. So cotangent would just be that flipped over, x over y. So that means that the cotangent would be negative root 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. So the denominators will just cancel out, and we'll be left with negative root 3 as our answer. For number 4, we're given that the tailgate of a truck is 2.5 feet above the ground, and the incline of the ramp used for loading is 24 degrees. Find the length of the ramp. So we're looking for the hypotenuse of the triangle. Since we are given the opposite side and we're looking for the hypotenuse, we want to use sine. So we have the sine of 24 degrees equals 2.5, so 2.5 over the length that we're looking for, which we can just call x. So to solve for x, we would first multiply by x and then divide by the sine of 24 degrees. So we have x equals 2.5 divided by the sine of 24 degrees. And that would be your answer in calculator ready form. Use the period of the function to select the expression that has the same value as the expression. So we're looking for what the same expression would be to the cosine of negative 63 pi over 8. Negative 63 pi over 8 is a really big angle. So we can find a smaller coterminal angle by adding 2 pi to it. So adding 2 pi would be the same as adding 16 pi over 8. And if we do that, negative 47 pi over 8. So we can add 16 pi again, 16 pi over 8, which would give us negative 31 pi over 8. If we add 16 pi over 8 again, we would get negative 15 pi over 8. And adding 16 pi one more time would give us pi over 8. So our answer would be C, the cosine of pi over 8. For number 6, the cable supporting a ski lift rises 2 feet for every 5 feet of horizontal length. So we can kind of think about that as the slope. So for every 2 feet, the rise over the run, would be 2/5. So if we drew a little triangle, we'd have 2/5. The top of the cable is fastened 1,320 feet above the cable's lowest point. Find the lengths B and C and find the measure of angle theta. So since we know the ratio of rise over run is 2/5, we can set up a proportion. So 2/5 equals 1,320 over B, since we're looking for the run. So 2B would equal 5 times 0 is 0, 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1, 5 times 3 is 15, so that would be 16. So there we go, 660 divided by 2. We would get that B was 3,300. Now to find angle measure of C, we could just use Pythagorean theorem. So we have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So 1,320 squared plus 3,300 squared equals c squared. So of course the numbers won't be this big on the final since it's non-calculator, but we would end up with c equaling 3,554. And then to find our angle theta, we have a lot of options that we can use since we know the values of the three sides. We can say that the sine of theta equals 1,320 over 3,554. And then if we took the inverse sine, we would end up with our angle theta. So just matching with what we know that it would have to be choice B. Number 7 can be omitted since we are not having a calculator on the final. Number 8 can also be omitted. Number 9, convert the measure from degrees to radians, and in this case we'll just leave it in calculator ready form. So if we have -4 degrees, to convert it to radians, we want to multiply by pi over 180 and then reduce it. So we would end up with, -pi over 45. For number 10, if tan theta equals √3/3, we need to find sine theta. And we're told that we're given an acute angle, so we know that it must be in the first quadrant, since it would be less than 90. A good thing to do if you're given √3/3 is to unrationalize it and think about it as 1 over √3. So if I draw that triangle, I know that the opposite side is 1 and the adjacent side is √3, since tangent is opposite over adjacent. And now I want to find the sine of theta. So since this is a triangle where we have 1 and √3, we know the hypotenuse is 2. So the sine of theta would equal 1/2, opposite over hypotenuse. Evaluate the sine, cosine, and tangent functions of the quadrant angle theta equals 0. So if we have theta equals 0, we want to use the coordinate instead of using a triangle to evaluate sine, cosine, and tangent since it's quadrant angle. And we know that the coordinate of 0 is 1, 0. So the sine of theta is always the y value of the coordinate if we're using the unit circle. So the sine would equal 0. The cosine of theta is always the x value. So we know that the cosine of theta would equal 1. And the tangent of theta is y over x. So 0 over 1 would equal 0. A flat roof rises at a 30-degree angle from the front wall of a storage shed to the back wall. So that means that the front wall would be shorter than the back wall, and we have the roof rising like that. So we can kind of redraw the triangle with a 30-degree angle. The front wall is 11.5 feet tall, and the back wall is 20.2 feet tall, which means that if we go over here to the triangle that we blew up, we can find the difference of the two walls, and that would be the length of our opposite side. So that would be 8.7. Find the length of the roof line and the depth of the shed from front to back. So if we wanted to find first the length of the roof, that would be the hypotenuse. So to find the length of the roof, we would need to use sine, since we have the opposite side and we're looking for the hypotenuse. So we'd have the sine of 30 equals 8.7 over x. Hopefully we know that the sine of 30 is 1/2. So 1/2 equals 8.7 over x. And if we cross multiplied, we would know that x equals 17.4. Now we need to find the depth. So we can call the depth y. And in order to find y, we would use tangent, since we have the opposite side and we're looking for the adjacent side. So we would have that the tangent of 30 degrees equals 8.7 over x. And we know that the tangent of 30 degrees is 1 over root 3. And if we did some cross multiplying, we would have x equals 8.7 times the square root of 3. And since the final won't be calculator, you could just leave the answer like that in calculator ready form. Rewrite the indicated trig function in terms of the angle's reference angle. Use the same function. So we're just trying to find the reference angle of negative 354 degrees. So if we take a look at the unit circle, we want to go the negative direction. So negative 354 would be almost all the way around to 360. And we know that it is 6 degrees away. So we would rewrite this as the sine of 6 degrees. We can skip number 14 since that is a calculator question. However, we can do 15 without a calculator. So we want to evaluate the sine of 4 pi over 3, the cosine, and the tangent. So in order to find these three trig functions, we want to find the angle 4 pi over 3 using our unit circle. So 4 pi over 3 would be just past pi. And we know that we're working with a 60-degree angle since it's a pi over 3. And if we fill in the sides, we know that the opposite side would be negative root 3 since it's going down the y's. And the x side would be negative 1. And the hypotenuse would be positive 2 since the hypotenuse is always positive. And now we're ready to evaluate the three trig functions. So the sine would be opposite over hypotenuse, which is negative root 3 over 2. The cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so negative 1/2. And the tangent is opposite over adjacent, so negative root 3 divided by negative 1 would be a positive root 3.